it's interesting to hear what Adam Schiff said about impeachment. I think he is entirely right about that. He's not right about everything, but I think he's right about that. That does not mean, however, that they're not going to take this obstruction of justice matter, the Democrats, and beat Trump over the head with it to the extent that they can. And there is a legal argument that you can already hear being outlined. It goes this way. It says the only reason that Mueller did not find obstruction of justice is because he was bound by Justice Department policy not to charge a sitting president, and therefore he could not, in fairness, he couldn't make an accusation without delivering an indictment, and because he couldn't indict, he didn't do it. And the implication of that is, of course, that Trump is indeed guilty of obstruction of justice, and we're going to be hearing about that for some time now. I think that's where this is now going. I think collusion is dead as a doornail.
Yeah, Jen Nadler, Molly, earlier today, other Democrats saying that the Attorney General's preface to all of this coming out was essentially him protecting the president. Take a listen.
Attorney General Barr appears to have shown an unsettling willingness to undermine his own department in order to protect President Trump.
The thought that Bill Barr at age 69 as his second tour as Attorney General would do anything to tarnish his own image or reputation is completely ridiculous.
Thoughts?
Yeah, the Bill Barr, who was George H.W. Bush's Attorney General and is coming back for his second tour, gave a press conference where he explained, again, the summary conclusions of the special counsel report. He has an obligation to protect the FBI and the Department of Justice, which he oversees. They have been hurt tremendously by this story, where they participated in this Russia collusion hoax that kind of roiled the country for several years. They had all these powers that were going against a political campaign. They behaved in inappropriate manners, starting the campaign against the Trump, or starting the investigation against the Trump campaign, and selectively leaking information to damage the president. I think he cares greatly about restoring the trust and credibility of the FBI and Department of Justice. To do that will require holding some people accountable. It also requires getting the special counsel report completed and wrapped up, and I think he did a remarkably good job of just laying out the facts. He's also let us know, though, that a reckoning is coming for the people who participated in this and who destroyed the trust that Americans have in the FBI and Department of Justice.
You know, politically, Mo, it seems like the signals you're getting from Democratic leadership is this may not be worth going down the impeachment road.
I mean, I think anybody would tell you that impeachment, like, that's got to be rock solid. I mean, I think Adam Schiff was right. If you shoot for the bear and miss, right, you're in trouble, as Republicans found out when they tried to impeach, or when they impeached but failed to convict President Clinton back in the 90s. But having said that, I think Britt's right. I think you are going to hear them continue to talk about some of these issues, particularly as they pertain to obstruction. Because, look, I walked into the day not knowing what to expect, thinking this may end up kind of fizzling and we all kind of retreat to our partisan corners. Now, yes, we've all retreated to our partisan corners. But I did see some real interesting things on the obstruction issue. When Mueller says specifically, we would have exonerated if we could, and we didn't. And then when he said, and I think the direct quote was, the evidence does indicate that a thorough FBI investigation would uncover facts about the campaign and the president personally that the president could have understood to be crimes or that would give rise to personal and political concerns. He is pointing out that obstruction could be real. I can't indict him. Congress, you may want to look at this, and he puts in the report a strong rationale for Congress to look at it.
So you can't indict him. So two things. One is there are embarrassing parts of this. There are things that were said by the White House that this report says were not true at the time, right. That the president said that were not true. It says that he told people to do things, they didn't do them, and that's one of the things that prevented them from going forward with obstruction. But overall, do you take this as a net positive for the president?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to try, when we're stuck in one of these media frenzies, to step back and try and take the long view. How is this going to be looked at 6 days from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now? And after all the hyperventilating is done, and no matter what Democrats end up doing beyond this, the bottom line, the headline, is whether you like Trump or not, it is no collusion and no obstruction. As a legal matter, those issues are both dead. They're not as a political matter, and that depends on what the Democrats decide to do next. Britt?
Well, I would just say that anytime anybody starts in on Trump on obstruction of justice, people will have the opportunity to look at what these people said about collusion. And if they are among the pack of people, and it's a considerable pack, who banged on that drum for 2 years, which turned out to be they drilled down that hole and it turned out to be a dry hole, I'm not sure how much credibility they'll have, but they will certainly try. You can imagine Jerry Nadler, he might not like hearing from Adam Schiff or from the majority leader Steny Hoyer that impeachment is not a great idea, and he was a little restrained about it today. But look, that's the only remedy they would have if they wanted to try to convict Donald Trump of obstruction of justice, and they're certainly going to try to do that in the court of public opinion. Whether they go forward with it in the Congress in an impeachment proceeding remains to be seen.
Yeah, Molly,
we all have our doubts.
The thing that I guess a lot of people look at is there really going to be an investigation to the start of this thing? Is there really going to be people that you think should be held accountable for the beginning of this investigation? Because a lot of times it goes into the ether and people just move on.
The country was basically held hostage by a collusion theory, a theory that the President of the United States was a foreign agent. This undermined the administration of our government. It totally sidelined the Department of Justice. It hampered our ability to do foreign policy. It was a very negative thing. There needs to be accountability. We're being given indications that there will be accountability for this. But it's really important that after, the American people tolerated this investigation because they were told there was reason to believe that the president was a traitor. The idea that we're going to just quickly move on from this, like, oh, okay, I guess it was our bad, there was no collusion, but now we're going to try and go on obstruction, is patently absurd.
Right.
People do need to be held accountable
Are
for
you
how this started.
concerned? It's pretty detailed in the context that the Russians had and their attempts and their contacts with, I'm just saying, are you concerned with the level of activity that the Russians took to try to interfere with the 2016
What I'm
election?
mostly concerned about with this report is that it doesn't include all of the activity. We know there was a campaign that worked with Russians to interfere in the election. That was the Hillary Clinton campaign that secretly bought this information operation. According to the author of that dossier, he used Kremlin sources. There's nothing in the document about this. So I actually wish that we had seen more about Russia's efforts because we don't have any information about the actual campaign.
You wonder what's going to be in the Inspector General's report, which comes out at the end of May, beginning of June. Last word.
Look, I have a problem with people who say that this was a big fraud or a waste of time. At the end of the day, this investigation pointed to specific cases of Russian interference that we should all be upset about. And it is said that the Trump campaign knew about it. Maybe they didn't coordinate the activity with them, but they knew about it in real time. This is an investigation that resulted in dozens of indictments and some convictions and some guilty pleas from some people who did some really bad things. Does it connect directly to the President of the United States? Not necessarily on the coordination aspect,
No,
but
definitely
on
not
the
on the coordination.
but
That's
on
where
the-
it is. When you say not necessarily, I kept on reading this line of Tom Perez. No, there's no established coordination. Period. It's not like a level of criminal activity. It's no.
He says no criminal conspiracy, but he says that there was some contact between them that they were aware. Now, put that aside.
No. The investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian
Right,
government
that's why
and its election interference
That's why I
activities.
am being very specific by saying there was contact and that they knew about the activity, even if they didn't coordinate it. And the obstruction question, he points very strongly to the fact that there could be something there, even if he couldn't indict.
You
That
guys
is
are
a
going to come
real
back.
thing.
We have another panel coming up. Up next, another delay in Afghanistan peace talks involving the Taliban. We're there.
As the one who's always trapped beneath the duvet, I'm begging you, take Gas-X. Your tossing and turning isn't restlessness, it's gas. Gas-X releases pressure, bloating, and discomfort fast, so we can all sleep easier tonight.
Doug, what do all these people have in common? Exactly. Nothing. They're completely different people. That's why they make customized car insurance from Liberty Mutual. They'll only pay for what they need. Yes, and they could save